Sarah, all day. Hell yeah.
Arm wrestling's about to take place.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about your big arm wrestling event that you threw at your high school, I believe. And the reason why I bring that up is I think that is just amazing for our sport. And we need a lot more of that because watching the eastern part of the world and their youth of arm wrestling, they have tremendous amount of athletes coming up, very strong guys, really young and all. And I see us lacking behind in North America. And then when I seen that tournament that you and your dad threw together at your high school, I had hope. I was like, all right, this is where we got to grow the next generation. So I want to first find out, how did that all come about?
So how that actually started was some guy, Philip Lazon. He's a gym teacher over at some French school nearby, and he had an arm wrestling club at his school, and he wanted to run an event. So he contacted my dad, and he contacted a bunch of different schools, and we ended up working it out, getting permission from the board, and we got a tournament running at his school. So he got, I think it was 13 other schools involved. So it was a giant event. There was like, I think around 300 kids there competing. And it was so amazing. We made clubs all over Ontario, and it was just an amazing event. I think it was incredibly impactful because there was no injuries. If there was injuries, it would scare off other schools and they wouldn't want to do the same. But now I'm getting like daily messages from people being like, "Oh, I'm starting up an arm wrestling club at my school because of your video I showed them," and it's so exciting to see that. And it's great to see that arm wrestling is spreading to schools, because that's the next step. Once arm wrestling is in schools and once it's like recognized by the government that it's an official sport and it gets paid athletes and stuff, then it's just the level in the West will become incredibly higher.
Now, I got to ask you, the only thing I see as an obstacle with that is liability, because whenever I bring up arm wrestling, everybody's right away thinks about getting their arm broken or something like that. So we really got to encourage safety and teaching people the right way to pull. But how do we get these schools that they're down to do that? And now, did you guys have to sign any waivers or anything to pull in this tournament?
Yeah, so we signed a couple waivers, basically just saying if we get hurt, it's our own fault, and we really pushed safety. Like we sent out a bunch of videos that were just saying like, make sure you know how to look at your hand and all the important arm wrestling tips. And I think at this age, it's very helpful as well, because most kids don't really have enough power to break somebody's arm unless you're in a terrible position. Like at this age, even if you get something hurt, you'll heal from that, and it's not the end of the world even. But yeah, so as long as you're signing waivers and getting permission from the parents and all the things, it shouldn't be much of an issue unless there's some crazy incident and then schools just start banning it. But I doubt that would happen.
Now, how about you and your friends? Because, I'm sure everybody's following your journey on YouTube and, your father's journey as well. Are they all into arm wrestling now? Do you guys have your own practice? Like, how does that work out?
Yeah, so most of my friends are huge fans of arm wrestling now. Like I got I think it's like six of my buddies, like we're really close friends who are super into arm wrestling now. Like they'll train all the time. They'll come to practice with me as well. And we don't have our own club or anything, but basically whenever we're hanging out, we'll be arm wrestling. Like I'll bring out my table and we'll just be practicing all night. And it's really awesome to just have seen that I impacted my friend group in that way, and just see people fall in love with the sport just like how I have.
Now, what was the reaction of all the teachers and all that? Were they all positive towards it and, want more of it, or, not really?
They all loved it. Every single teacher I talked to was like, this was so cool. It was like the coolest thing to all of them. A bunch of them were helping us out with the club as well, just volunteering and getting more people there. And all the teachers in the school were actually live streaming it like to the class. Like they'd click on the live stream and they're showing the class while like they were teaching and stuff. So everybody I talked to was in huge support of it and thought it was the coolest thing ever. And now we've got it running. So they're gonna make another club next year, even when I'm not in school, to make another one and another one. And it's overall so incredibly positive.
Now, is there any chance of getting this as part of like a gym class or anything like that? Have you talked anything like that with them?
So as a gym class, I feel like it'd be really difficult anyways, because you'd need a lot of tables, you'd need a lot of equipment for just a gym. And although it's definitely possible and it can totally happen, I don't see it happening in an actual class. I feel like it's a much more club thing. Like it's way works way better as a club, because then everybody who's there wants to actually do it and is trying to learn better themselves. In a gym class, it's different. It's people don't always care, and that wouldn't work as well in arm wrestling, and there'll be injuries that way.
Where do you recommend? Because you're the next generation coming up. How can we grow our sport, and start getting all these young athletes in? Do you have any other ideas? And for those promoters out there, what's the best way for them to get into the schools and all? Like, how do you approach? Who do you approach? Do you know any of that?
Yeah, so I actually have thought about that a lot. I've thought about that so much, and I feel like it's pretty simple. You got to look at how other people have done it. Like for example, the UFC, like just how to get it more publicized and further. I think the main thing we need is we need certain levels of testing in different areas. There can be like tested events and non-tested events, because the tested events make it much more feasible for the everyday person, and that gets kids hooked. Because kids, if they look at even arm wrestling, like the top peak, it's scary. Like those people are scary. It's not always something you want to aspire to be. It's not. It's like, oh my god, that person's like something incredible. But if you look at a tested event, it would be much safer. Like parents would be happy if a kid decides to want to do that, as opposed to some other sport. And I feel like just getting testing into a league would maximize the amount of reach we would get, and that would start getting more schools involved and getting people really wanting to push people into arm wrestling. And I think that's the way to do it. I think get a league with testing and get it public, and people will fall in love with that.
And when you say testing, you mean steroid testing, correct?
Yes.
Now, now that's the only thing I see that could be a problem. It's just the cost and the expense that goes along with that for tournaments. Do you see that as being an obstacle to get around?
Yeah. So the only way we'd be able to feasibly make testing work is if we get mainstream sponsors. Otherwise, it's not possibly going to happen. But they kind of go hand in hand. Like a mainstream sponsor isn't going to sponsor arm wrestling because there's no testing. But also to get testing, we need mainstream sponsors. So it's a difficult area. But as soon as we get one, as soon as we have lots of money to run events, I feel like testing is not that far in the future.
Now, the only other thing I see a problem with is with the testing is, I don't really see that taking off for, the adults, and I think we would lose a lot of people, just kind of like the bodybuilding scene, when you have the tested events there, the all natural, their turnouts are a lot less than, the untested. So that's the only thing I would be a little hesitant with as far as that. But how does like somebody like me, a promoter, how do we go about getting into the schools? Should I just hit up my local school in the area, the high school or something, or a college? And who do I hit up? Is it like the principal, the superintendent? How would I go about to get this ball rolling? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so the way that we do it is we had to get board permission. That's really where it starts. As soon as you have board permission, basically the teachers or principals, they'll just go along with it, because it's above them. They can't say no at that point, really. So if you can contact somebody in any board of any school and get permission to run clubs, run events, run different stuff like that, as soon as you get permission, you can just basically go ahead and do it, and people will show up, people will get involved. But a lot of it, you need clubs, you need people interested, you need to make cool events for kids that'll get them hooked, and that's really how it starts.
Now, the arm wrestling clubs, now, how would they set that up? Would they be meeting a couple times a week, once once every 2 weeks? Like, what's the best setup for that, do you think?
So the way that we had it, which I thought was basically perfect, is it was 2 times a week. One of them was at lunch hour. Most schools have some sort of lunch hour where they have like an hour where they get to eat and do activities and stuff. So we had one on our lunch hour, and then one of them was after school. That way it works for everybody. If people can't stay after school, they can at least get one. If people have something else at lunch, they can go to the one after school. And it worked really perfect because that way 2 practices a week spread out, like I'd say like Monday and Friday or like Monday and Thursday or something like that. It works perfect. That way you can go super hard and take a couple of days off, and then super hard again, take the weekend off, and just repeat that over and over again. And you'll get some pretty super strong kids.
Now, are you concentrating just on table time, or are you also doing gym lifts as well?
I do both. I feel like table time is very important to just build tendon stability and just like your mind as well. It's very important to have natural like reflexes to arm wrestling things, because that improves your reaction time by so much. Like if somebody's ripping into some move and I don't really have time to think about it and I just move, it's way better than me having to stop, think about what I'm going to do, and then do it. So I feel like table time cannot be underestimated, but lifts are also super important to build high-end strength. So I do both. I train with weights every single day, and I go to an arm wrestling practice, I'd say minimum twice. So I go 2 times by club, and then often I'll be practicing with my friends as well.
And what does your lifts look like in the gym? Are you just doing arm wrestling specific exercises, or are you doing bodybuilding? What are you trying to do in the gym?
So it's a bit of both. I would say mostly arm wrestling related, very, very specific lifts like rise, roll, cup, pronation, all these different things. But I also do just general bodybuilding stuff as well, just to keep my whole body in shape and make sure that I'm not lacking in any areas that just are needed. So I work out everything I can, but mostly arm wrestling.
And are you training with your father at all during these lifts at all, or you do your own thing?
So he gives me a lot of help in what I do, but mostly it's my own thing. Very, very similar training regimen in all the different stuff we do. Prioritizing height, rise, roll, those kind of things, very important. So we train very similarly, but not the exact same.
Now, are you going to an actual gym, or you have everything at your house?
So I've got everything at my house for arm wrestling training, but if I'm doing other stuff, sometimes I'll go with my friends to the local gyms and work out there as well. But if I'm training arm wrestling, I'll just stay at my house. I've got everything here.